Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, welcome to today's professional development webinar brought to you by the Fashion Network. The Fashion Network, our mission here at TFN is to bring you the best learning content in order for you to grow in your role and help you to add value to the business that you either own, the business you work for, or the business that you aspire to work for. In today's session, we will be looking at the ever-changing role of the influencer. We'll be talking about latest trends and what we might expect this 2022. Some of the specifics that we'll be looking at, we'll be talking a little bit about the recent story in the press about TikTokers at Fashion Week. We'll be talking about latest trends that you might want to keep your eye on. We'll also talk again about choosing the right influencers for your campaign and your business and how best to work with them. We'll be discussing how to keep your influencer campaign fresh, when and why to bring in influencers in-house. We'll also be looking at what sort of things we can expect later this year in terms of sort of trends and stuff like that. Just a few things to note now before we begin. If you do have any questions or any comments, then please leave them in the chat box. If you're not familiar with Zoom webinars, then you should see a toolbar at the bottom of your screen. There's a little chat box there, so you can leave both questions and comments. All we ask is don't make them too long, really, because it's otherwise I have to read loads of text and it slows things up. We want to keep this discussion as interactive as possible. We were just talking about that before we went live, so please do get involved. Alternatively, if you prefer to speak rather than type, you can actually click on a little icon like a raise your hand feature. What that will allow us to do is to turn your audio feed on. Don't worry, it doesn't allow us to turn your video feed on, so don't panic about that. But if you do want to talk to us directly, you can do that. Just click your raise your hand feature. That will let us know that you want to talk to us. If you happen to be watching this on our YouTube channel, unfortunately, you won't be able to interact with us on there. The only way you can do that is to sign into our portal. That's thefashionnetwork.co.uk, and there's a little link there where you can join us here in this webinar, and you can sort of interact with us that way. It would also be good for myself and the panelists today if you could just let us know in the chat box a couple of things. Just let us know where in the world that you're currently listening to us. Let us know what you do, and let us know if you want to give your company a plug. Let us know what company or brand that you work for. So yeah, let us know where you're from in the world. Let us know what you do, and if you want to give your company a plug, let us know who you work for. If you happen to be a student, just let us know what you're studying and where you're studying. That'll just give us an idea of who we are talking to. Anyway, my name is Dale Hicks. I am the co-founder and director of the Fashion Network. I will be today's chair. Joining me, we have Zodee, who's the co-founder of Influxer. Influxer is all about real-time performance data, helping brands to track results within and metrics within fashion influencer campaigns. Alongside we have Mark Dandy, founder of Captive Influence. Now, Captive Influence is a global influencer marketing agency specializing in creative social-led campaigns to drive ROI for brands, retailers, and anybody involved with influencer marketing campaign. Next to Mark, we have Lucia Cappuccio, head of talent at the Blogger Agency. Now, the Blogger Agency is a digital-first influencer management agency with a particular focus on fashion and beauty. So that's today's panel. Thank you guys for joining us to share your insights. And without further ado, I'm going to crack on with my first question. So some of you might have read in the press recently that there was a little bit of a backlash to some of the TikTokers at Fashion Week, at London Fashion Week in particular, saying that some of them were sort of downgrading the show and stuff. Now, Em, we were talking about this earlier. You had a few things to say about it. What's your thoughts about the TikTokers and London Fashion Week? Do you think it's just a case of snobbery from the old guard, or do you think they have a right to be there?
I mean, I can understand their point of view in the sense that obviously things are changing quite a lot and quite rapidly. But personally, I feel like it's kind of a welcome change because I was saying, that I guess the other side of the coin is that these fashion brands used to be so exclusive and almost a little inaccessible to, your average person. And by these influencers maybe attending the events, creating the reels, doing the live stories or live sessions on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, it just, I guess, makes the audience feel like they're there and they're more included, and the brands this way can kind of reach an audience where they weren't really accessing before through these types of influencers that are attending. So I completely get that argument, but at the same time I feel like there is a positive outlook too, depending on how you wish to see it, and some brands really can take advantage of this because it just depends on each brand's goals. If you're trying to broaden your audience and things like that, then I definitely think that including influencers could be a good choice. But if you want to keep it very exclusive, very exclusive, if you want to keep it like that, then obviously maybe you want to be more picky with who you let into your shows and things like that.
Lucia, what's your thoughts on this? Do you think this is just a case of snobbery or people not understanding what TikTokers can add to London Fashion Week?
I mean, I agree. I can see the point of view that people, and they think it's this really exclusive industry, which I guess it is, with especially London Fashion Week, and it is quite inaccessible to like the general public. But I think what we need to kind of accept and get used to is that influencers are infiltrating kind of every form of media outlet, everything at the moment. Like, they're on our TVs, they're going to London Fashion Week. Like, there is this crossover between the online digital world and the real world. Like, they are featuring a lot more, and I think it's just something that we do need to people just need to kind of keep up with it, because that is these are the new celebrities now. Like, these are the people that people are looking to and have these big followings, and they have a really important fan base. And I think it's just as important that they kind of have a seat there, just as anybody else, really.
And where do you think this comes from then? Do you think it's just a case of like people not respecting people that put content out on different channels? Where do you think it comes from?
Yeah, I think it's definitely oh, sorry, go on.
No, I mean, I just think it's like with every single change that comes about, there's going to be people that are a little bit skeptical at first, so I just think it's just because it's such a new thing that, it's still quite a lot of people that aren't still fully on board with it, but yeah, I think it will probably eventually get there.
And do you think there's something specific about TikTok itself, or that's given us a little bit of a resistance to them being there? Because I saw something somewhere saying they shouldn't be on the front rows, they should be left to the traditional media, if you like.
I mean, maybe it's because like TikTok obviously is quite a fun platform, it's about dancing, trending and stuff like that, so maybe it's not being taken seriously because of the label of TikTok and what type of content is produced on there. Because it's quite fun, maybe it's just not taken seriously because of the brand and the type of content that gets produced on there.
God forbid that fashion and fun should go together, eh? Mark, have you got any thoughts on the topics? I know you work in a slightly different market there.
I remember it must have been about 4 or 5 years ago. It was a very famous article that was written by the head of Vogue at the time. It was one of the head editors at Vogue, that was kicking off about influencers in general being at fashion shows. I think this was New York Fashion Week at the time. And she panned the whole influencer industry and said that they didn't deserve to be there, that they were effectively nobodies, and that they shouldn't be representing fashion consumers at major fashion events. Vogue now seem to have changed their tune quite a lot. They tend to write a lot of positive articles about influencers these days because they know that they're essential to their business. And so I think it is an interesting one. I think I agree with them in terms of TikTok being seen as more of a fun kind of throwaway platform. I mean, you could probably say some of that about the outfits that are on the catwalk for London Fashion Week, couldn't you really? Like, some of them aren't always the ones that are going to go into mainstream. But I think obviously with Instagram, it's a lot more curated, it's a lot more artistic, it's a lot more, I guess, trend-led in terms of how, I guess, like, culture and fashion culture essentially kind of creates trends within Instagram and is from that, moving forward. Whereas I think obviously with TikTok, it's more kind of music led and trend led in terms of comedy and fun and, getting people to exchange with laughter and short form content. So it's not as industry led. I think, it's more kind of creator led, which is where the problem, I think, lies with the fashion industry's representation across TikTok. I think they're a little bit worried that it's not them setting the trends, it's the TikTokers. Whereas with Instagram, I think that they tend to follow the fashion industry's lead and then, you know, try and give them what they want, essentially.
So potentially it's a threat, really, I guess, threat to power, I guess, in some respects. You know?
I'd probably agree, because I mean, at the end of the day, you can't say that a platform with over 1 billion users is not a threat to any industry in terms of how you know, that industry is moving. And I think what we've noticed from a social and influencer point of view is that it's the influencers now that are setting the trends. It's the influencers now that are leading the way. And the platforms have just been very good at adjusting the sails to whichever way the wind blows. And it's those creators that are creating the trends. And at the end of the day, it's the platforms that want to sell advertising space to users, which they need the creators on the platforms to drive the engagement. And I think that TikTok is a lot more creator-led and pushing out trends much faster than any other platform, which means that they're very adaptable and very quick to jump on things. I think the influencer space on Instagram is maybe a little bit more, what I'd say, reliable. You can kind of understand what's coming. You can kind of forecast what things might be. TikTok, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think the fashion space is a little bit wary of that because they don't know how their brands are going to be perceived. They have literally no control whatsoever.
Or Lucia, do you agree with that?
I think that's such a good point that you just said, that, you know, they don't have no control about what comes next, basically, and basically that might be scary for them.
Lucia?
Yeah. I think there's even like a type of snobbery within the influencer sphere.
I was going to ask that. I was just about to ask that.
About TikTok, because I think, as Mark was saying, like Instagram is very like curated, and, you know, you can put a lot of time into, even YouTube as well, into creating that content, making sure that it looks right, that it's this, it's that, and it could still underperform. Whereas TikTok, you can make something within a couple of seconds and it's hit a huge audience just because, you know, it's following a trend, or it's, you know, it's something that's relevant at that point. And TikTok's pushing that out to a wider audience. So I think as well within that, there is a little bit of that, there is potentially a bit of snobbery within the influencer sphere, that they feel like, why are these people kind of the ones? I know over the course of the pandemic, there's been so many people that have come up through TikTok. And I think sometimes some people may look at that when they've been really, really pushing hard at another platform for years even, and haven't had the same reception. And I think TikTok as well, a lot of the people that have platforms are like normal people who have just had their posts pushed out to an audience, and now they have this fan base. So I think as well, that's kind of where it comes from with the whole London Fashion Weeks. I think people see them and say, like you said, these are nobodies. These are people who even are they? Like, what even have they done? But yeah.
What does that mean for you guys or for brands? Like, you know, I mean, obviously it sounds like there's a snobbery between the platforms. You know, it sounds like Instagram's a little bit considered like, you know, the old guard, if you like. But what does it mean for brands if you're managing these campaigns or trying to recruit influencers? Are you at risk of devaluing your brand if you do too much TikTok orientated influencer marketing, or, you know, Mark?
I wouldn't say so. No, I think obviously, like when you're designing influencer strategies and you're working with creators, there still is that element of control over the brief and how, you know, you want your brand to be represented on social. So I don't think that's an issue, but you are taking more of a risk in terms of content performance. I think with Instagram, you can look at historical performance on Instagram. You can see that someone's got a 5% engagement rate, for example, and you can pretty much work out that they're probably going to get something similar over the course of a campaign. And you can work out then quite reliably what your objectives are going to be, what the results are going to be, and how you want that campaign to run. I think with TikTok, you're looking at it and thinking, wow, well, this influencer got 4 million views yesterday and 10,000 views today. And, you know, they're asking us for, say £5,000 for a post, and yet, I have no idea, are they going to get 4 million views, to which then that £5,000 quite well spent, or are they going to get 10,000 views, to which that is astronomically expensive? And you run the risk on that. I think obviously it's down to us as industry professionals to work out the balance of where that risk should sit, and understand how to use TikTok more efficiently, I think, for the brands that we work with. But I wouldn't say that there was a risk to the brand perception by being involved in TikTok, because I think that there's still an element of that control in terms of a brief and how that is put out there. What I would say, sorry to take up a lot of time, is that there is obviously an issue of brand perception in general, in terms of how wildly viral TikTok videos can go. And obviously the old adage about brands is it's not what people say about you to you, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. And that's how your brand is actually perceived. It's not, you don't actually control your brand, it's how you're perceived. And that can change incredibly quickly on TikTok by just how, I've seen, especially over the pandemic, for example, how airlines have handled travelers and things like that, and how they've dealt with customers. And again, where you've just had, it's not an influencer, it's just a customer that has said, I don't like that this has happened to me, and they've just gone wildly viral. And then that brand has been absolutely desecrated on social, and then it spills out onto other platforms, because then people see it and then they share it on Twitter, and then it goes viral again, and it becomes a PR comms nightmare. So I would say that you need to be on there really to start being involved in that conversation, because if you're not, then the conversation will be had about you when you're not there, and then you have no control whatsoever.
Yes, just looking at the chat box, so just a huge welcome for everyone that's joined us. We've got people here from Germany and the UK, and some people from the States. So welcome, guys. And if you want to sort of join the discussion, just pop any comments or questions in the chat box. But if you can, try and do it so that other people can see it. You have to just click see all, and then other people in the room can see what you're saying. I'd like to move on then. We talked a little bit about trends. So what you guys, I might come to you first on this, Em, actually. What sort of trends are you sort of seeing at the moment now? Obviously, we spoke about TikTok and, and how that's having a massive impact on fashion. But what other sort of trends you see specifically sort of in the fashion space at the moment?
I really feel like the trend these days is actually just moving towards less perfect and less, there was a whole era of just the aesthetic feed, and everything needed to be perfect, and it just, it was very curated. Whereas now it's very much like, we're trying to get rid of that and make it more real life, make it more authentic, relatable. Even the stuff that's being published, reels, there'll be like a 5-second clip that has 100,000 views of someone walking from left to the right. That's literally in their outfit. That's it. That's the whole thing about the videos. It's just becoming more everyday type of content. And I've seen influencers moving away from the picture perfect feed into very real life. They're kind of toned down that side of things, and just trying to make it a lot more relatable and a lot more real life, everyday type of fashion.
And is that coming from the brands demanding this, or is it coming from actual sort of like the end users that are demanding this?
I think it's actually end users, because there's a lot more, like another type of trend that I'm noticing obviously is, a lot more open discussions on the behind the scenes of Instagram type of thing, or behind the scenes of TikTok or social media in general, that it is not real, so people are just trying to take away that whole filter, talk about more topics like mental health, diversity, struggles behind the scenes, and more everyday life. So I think this can kind of translate into fashion in that sense too, because it just becomes a bit more of a casual conversation rather than a commercial kind of thing. And I think that's kind of come from the end users, because people are kind of tired of the whole facade of social media in a way.
Lucia, what are you spotting at the moment in terms of trends?
Yeah, I think definitely this whole being more authentic, but as people's attention spans are getting a lot less. So it seems to me that there's a lot more like the snappier content, like Em was saying, like the walking across the screen, showing the outfits. I think more of like a laid back vibe with content and clothing as well, especially in the fashion industry. just again trying to show, people do these videos, here's what I wore every day of the week, and they just go crazy, and it's nothing special or extravagant. It's literally just people showing kind of their everyday life, and people just invested. I think what it is really is that if you're, obviously you have this viral content, but if there's a creator that has a big following, it's that the people who are watching are really invested in that particular person. So they really like their style, they like their personality. So it's kind of whatever content that they're kind of showcasing, they have that cult following that is going to be really interested in what they're posting. I think that is the most important thing really for putting out.
And do you think it might be like down to being relatability? So obviously the traditional content creators, they create this fantasy world of, which is almost unobtainable, same for male and women. Sometimes as a guy looking at fashion thinking, God, there's no way I could be that shape, or whatever it might be. Yeah. Do you think there's an element of relatability? Do you think is what's driving this?
Yeah, definitely. And I think TikTok as well helps a lot with that. Again, going back to the whole authenticity thing, seeing real people showcasing their everyday lives. There's especially in the fashion world, I think, for example, like girls that are not necessarily, they don't look like the girls that you see walking on the catwalk. They're, size 12, 14, 16, and they're showing the real struggles of buying clothes. And I think that's the sort of thing that people do want to see. They want to see how it looks on everyday people. And yeah, that is just that relatability really.
And Mark, do you think then, what Lucia's just said, then do you think there's I don't want to go as far as saying the days of doing this unobtainable content are over, but do you think now that is becoming less relevant and
Yeah, 100%, because basically, obviously TikTok has taken the world by storm, and I think it's obviously really impacted Mark Zuckerberg and how fast everything has taken off, especially in the US. Adam Mosseri yesterday for Instagram has now released a new update so that Reels can now be released on Facebook, so that any views that you get on Facebook counts towards your Reels total. And they've now openly admitted that Instagram is now a video platform. So I think, we're moving towards that less curation, more snappy, quick content that's more relatable, and that's more the everyday person. I think, if you look at the difference between TikTok and Instagram Reels, for example, you'll still find that Reels are a lot more put together. They're a lot more curated. There's still an aesthetic that needs to kind of be kept up with to stick in with the Instagram platform. But it's now starting to move more towards TikTok and become more of a short form video platform. So I think that there's obviously a huge shift from what used to be a very aesthetically pleasing, everything had to look as glamorous as possible. And I think, even now, obviously, if we attribute it to the fashion brands, and I think previously you'd always have a very attractive young lady that would be the face of the brand and so on. Whereas the research now is that your average woman in the UK now is a size 16, to which you then are looking at, is the content that brands are putting out there relatable to the everyday person? And it's probably not, or it's not what it should be. And I think that then now is just meaning that the everyday consumer and the everyday TikTok user is now becoming an everyday producer. So rather than just consuming content, they're now producing content. And that's allowing, obviously, people to have a much larger share of the voice, whereas previously it would be dominated by, big publishers or big brands, and they'd be trying to lead that trend. And I just don't think that's happening anymore.
So is the days of aspirational marketing over? Because obviously, when I was always taught in marketing, you create an aspiration for people, particularly in fashion, but not exclusively in fashion. But is the days of creating that aspirational look over, or is that just part of the overall sort of content creating? Lucia, you're nodding away. Do you want to come back to me on that.
Yeah, I guess I feel like it is part. I think even when you have those people that are authentic and relatable, they are still the aspiration, and they're still an aspiration to a lot of people. I don't think it then makes it feel like, oh, because they're kind of similar to you or me, it's now not this perfect marketing scheme, basically. Like I think they are still, I think they are still the aspiration, really.
Right. You want to say something?
No, I mean, branding is still super important regardless, so still keeping that beautiful aspirational aspect of it, it's important.
Maybe our aspirations have changed, perhaps. Or maybe we're just sick of fantasy worlds that the advertising media sector have been giving us for the last 20 odd years, 100 odd years, so as long as it's been going. So on that note then, I want to just talk a little bit about choosing right influencers to work with. And I might go to Mark here, because obviously you do a lot more of this for clients, and then I'll come to Lucia after that. But do you want to just talk us through about, the sort of brands that you work with and the process in which you go about choosing the right influencers for the brands?
So, I mean, there's still elements that are hugely data-led. And I think we've gone through quite a shift in the role of the influencer, I think, whereas over the last 5 or 6 years, we kind of started off where if you had 1 million followers, you were the bee's knees, and everybody wanted to work with the influencer that had 1 million followers. And then we kind of dropped down to about that 100K, and then we went to micro, and then we went to nano, and then there'll probably be another name that we come up with in a year or so in terms of the type of creators that we want to work with. But the issue has been, obviously, is that the platforms themselves have been given quite a lot of like less and less organic reach, and so you're not really reaching as many of those people as you used to be, and there's a lot more involvement now within the paid advertising space in terms of being able to highly target people through Facebook advertising, Instagram, and even TikTok now in terms of how they're boosting platforms work. And I think previously, where we'd be looking at who is the audience that the influencer is speaking to, what does the demographic look like, are we reaching the right interest levels, we're now spending a lot more time focusing on what the content is like, what type of content is being produced, how is that content perceived, what is getting the most interactions and views in terms of content style, and then what type of content is leading the trends. And then with that, we're not then as interested in who that end audience is. We're looking at more, how can we work with influencers to mass produce content, which then gives us the ability to then use that content to then specifically target people that we're working with on a paid social side of things. So I think that the role of the influencer has kind of changed from being an influential voice speaking to their followers. I'm not saying that isn't apparent. I mean, it still does definitely happen. But they're now moving more into the role of creating content, rather than it just being a case of, I'm going to put a message out there to my 100,000 followers and trying to influence them to take a decision on our behalf.
Content's king, then, eh?
Yeah.
we had the cliche half hour, so with the context in there. Lucia, what's your sort of advice to people picking influencers? Obviously, you manage a lot of talent there, so what would you say about best practice in terms of how you go about picking influencers and content creators for various campaigns?
Yeah, so I guess on the flip side, we obviously speak to the brand about what they are looking for, what demographics they're actually looking to hit. So what kind of audience they're looking to target. And then, yeah, I guess we're seeing a lot more of the same thing as well with the content creation. Like a lot of our talent who maybe don't have as big following or as high engagement, but they create really, really good content that the brands want to then push out to a further audience and kind of almost using them as if they are a model in a campaign, but just a more noticeable face, I guess, that people see and recognize, and I've seen that person before. I think on the flip side of that, the influencers that we always find work the best is, again, going back to the people that have that kind of cult following and engagement, the people that their audience is really engaged with them as a creator, and if they suggest something, there's that trust that what they're suggesting is it's good. It's a good product. It's a good brand, because they have that trust already built up with this person that they've been following. But in terms of choosing influencers, we always do firstly look at demographics, obviously gender, age, countries, and then it's really dependent on what the brand is actually looking for as to what direction we kind of push it down.
Cool. I want to move on to my next question, which is about keeping campaigns fresh. I'm going to come to Em in a minute about that, but I'm just going to do a quick shout out for the brands that are in the room. So quick shout out here to Skating Panda in London, You Conscious, a vegan fashion brand based in Germany. We've also got Nat Nolan Inman Consultancy, and we've got Weekend Apparel. So welcome, guys. If you want us to give us a shout out or let us know you're here, just pop your company name in the chat box. But Em, over to you. Just give us your tips on how we can keep campaigns fresh and up to date.
I think it's honestly kind of bringing together what we've been discussing throughout the last half an hour, in the sense that, making your campaign relatable, finding influencers that are really representing your brand in an authentic way. You want this campaign to really speak to people in a really natural way. And therefore, you want to stay up to date with trends and pick influencers that are such a natural fit to your brand that people don't question it. Say if someone was, not a sports person, is, suddenly coming to promote something, powder or gym powders or whatever, it doesn't match up. Or, likewise with fashion. So it's more, I think it's about finding the right people who represent your brand. And also the other thing in terms of keeping your campaigns fresh is giving the creators the liberty to create the content that's authentic to them. So not box them in too much. Obviously, you want to have a nice and set brand guidelines, but you don't want to kind of limit their creativity, because the more you limit their creativity, the less authentic it will become. And to keep it fresh, I really feel like it's important to just really allow the influencer to be creative in their own way.
Okay. Next question I'd like to go on to is, obviously there's been a lot of brands that have brought influencers in-house. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now, if that's okay. I'll just do a quick hello to Chloe from ICG Strategic Marketing. Thanks for joining us. So Mark, I'm going to come over to you then. So obviously you've seen examples of people being hired in-house to work as creative directors and all that sort of stuff. What are your thoughts about bringing talent in-house, and when and why you should do that?
Well, I mean, the prime example is I had an influencer to come and join me at the agency. We hired an influencer in-house to come and help us on projects, because we wanted to see, obviously, like, we are working on influencer-led campaigns for clients. And so having an influencer's input in all of those campaigns, in terms of how they perceive approaches from agencies, how they perceive briefs, how they, all of these things, where getting that viewpoint before we send a brief out, where they're looking at it thinking, right, if I got this, how would I feel? How would I react? What would my initial thoughts be? Is really, really valuable. I think obviously we're seeing more and more big name creators now being asked to go in-house for brands. And I think it's a very clever marketing strategy. I think, at the end of the day, you are we'll go down the obvious route. Obviously, PLT and Molly May is probably the elephant in the room with this one. And at the end of the day, you normally would have influencers, especially in the fast fashion space, where on Monday they're posting for Misguided, and on Tuesday they're posting for Boohoo, and then on Wednesday they're posting for Pretty Little Thing, and so on. And their audience demand that, because they want choice, and they are interested in the different styles, the different deals. And we've noticed that, especially with Millennial and Gen Z customers, they're not as loyal as other generations, where they'll go where the deals are, they'll go where they can get something faster. If the choice is between Misguided and PLT, but one's offering free delivery, it'll probably be the one that gets free delivery, and so on. Whereas in moving more towards influencer-led creative direction, you are getting, I guess, what a more of an authentic